Hello there and welcome. This is as always Mikhail or Michael speaking, and before I start this video I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal or Super Thanks. I also want to apologize for my absence as I got sick pretty bad. I'm slowly recovering, so the videos will be coming out more regularly. I also want to thank you for your patience, and especially I want to say thank you to those who had concerns over my absence in the comment section. I really appreciate your care for me. So let's start with the video itself, and our first stop is going to be the settlement of Novomykhailivka. Here, within the last 24 hours, Russian forces launched series of highly successful attacks within the city itself, and as a result of that, were able to capture about 90% of the village. And here is exactly how much territories it was. As you can see, Russians successfully captured this small residential area, as well as this big chunk of territory to the south of the settlement. Almost immediately as those territorial changes were reported, news of continuous Russian assault within the remaining portions of the village started coming in hourly. Those reports suggested that Russians decided to went on the attack and clear the remaining portion of this village, and according to some latest news, have done so successfully. So perhaps as you are watching this video, Russians had already took this important village. Not going too far away from Vuglidar front, let's visit settlements of Pobieda and Heorhiivka. Here, Russians continued storming operations within Heorhiivka village, as well as attacked from Marinka along this road, right in between those two said villages. As soon as Pobieda fell some time ago, and Russians advanced significantly in Heorhiivka, Ukrainian formations in this general area found themselves isolated from the rest of their force. For some time they were able to hold out, but being attacked from 3 separate directions changed the course of this uneven battle, and after some time, Ukrainians retreated, leaving this area to the Russians. Here is exactly how much territories that was. As you can see, not only Russians cleared those open fields, but also gained more control over this road and captured several strongholds that were located in this area, thus increasing the possibility of withstanding incoming Ukrainian counterattacks to stop the Russian advance from this axis as well. Then from here, we move slightly to the north and discuss the situation in Krasnohorivka. Although there are no territorial changes to report, it is important to mention that Russians continue to actively storm the city and, despite all odds, withstood all of the Ukrainian counterattacks in attempt to throw them back. Those Russian attacks are usually supported by massive artillery strikes, an example of which you can see currently on your screen. It seems that the Battle of Krasnohorivka is entering its most active stage. Despite all attempts, Ukrainians are unable to throw Russians back, and Russians are slowly gaining more territories, capturing Krasnohorivka street by street and house by house. From Krasnohorivka, let's move to Avdiivka and discuss the frontline changes here as well. First, let's discuss situation within the village of Semenivka. And here on your screen, you can see how far Russians were able to expand their control within this village. Now, it is important to note that those news are not that new, but clarification and proof that Russians really did acquire those positions came somewhat late. As you can see, Russians are controlling about 70% of the village, with Ukrainians maybe controlling last 15, with the rest remaining in the gray zone. With the fall of Semenivka, Russians will surely gain tactical superiority, as they will be able to attack to the flank and rear of Ukrainians still defending in the outskirts of Berdichi, as well as support Russian efforts in attempt to capture village of Umanske. As you can see, Russians have slowly but surely penetrated Ukrainian defense, captured Berdichi, Semenivka, Heorhiivka, and are now very close to capturing Umanske, and with its fall, it is safe to assume that the second Ukrainian line of defense is no more. Now, Ukrainian hope lays within the third line of defense, which goes through Ochartini, Novomykhailivka, Solovьёve, Novopokrovske, Novosilivka Persha, and Mezhove. As you can see, Russians had already reached the third line of defense here in this area and are actively attacking in the direction of Novobakhmutivka and Ochartini, and I'm sure with the fall of Semenivka and Berdichi, they will continue to attack in the direction of the third line of defense, but of course only after clearing Umanske and capturing Yasnoborodivka, thus solidifying the front line and gaining ability to attack across the entire front from all possible directions. In theory, in one place Ukrainian defense should crack, which will allow Russians to establish foothold within the third line of defense and eventually capture it, as they did with the second one. Not going far from the center of the Avdiivka frontline, let's move to the northern flank and discuss the situation here as well. Last week was very productive for the Russians. as they continuously and successfully attacked in the direction of Ochertine, Novomykhailivka, and of course village of Novomykhailivka. Near Bakhmutivka, slightly to the south, Russians were able to acquire control over this tree line with a trench located inside it. Now, as you can see, they have successfully reached this tree line and are now gaining ability to attack towards this one as well. This will allow Russians to relatively safely advance along these tree lines under the cover of trees and reach Novobakhmutivka from the south. Not to say that Russians will also attack from the east as well as from the north and to the flank and rear of Ukrainian positions, which I will cover in short notice. As you can see, Ukrainian defenders within the village of Novobakhmutivka will soon find themselves in a very precarious position. And of course, if nothing is changed, they will be forced to retreat and leave the village to the Russians without much fight. Then let's move towards the village of Ochertine. As you can see, it is relatively big, so of course it makes it a proper target for massive Russian assault. Here they were able to successfully advance along these tree lines, enter and establish a foothold within the first houses of the village. Here is exactly how much territories Russians captured within the last 24 hours. Of course, here Ukrainians counterattack regularly in attempt to get rid of this very dangerous foothold due to many reasons. First of all, this successful attack initiated the battle for Ochertine itself, but as I said previously, greatly endangered Ukrainian positions in the village of Novobakhmutivka. With continuous Russian advance, Russians will surely capture this portion of the village as it is fairly isolated and is divided with a rail line standing in between this portion of the town and the village itself, and with it Russians will also gain ability to attack towards the village of Kalynove. So with this successful Russian attack, three very important villages are at risk of being captured. Of course, Novobakhmutivka has the higher risk. From here, let's move slightly to the east and discuss situation around village of Kalynove. As you can see, slowly but surely, Russians are trying to commit a pincer maneuver and perhaps join forces in the village of Keramik, because their attacks directly towards Kalynove from the south were relatively unsuccessful. But now, as you can see, village of Netailove find itself in a partial encirclement, as the battle for Kalynove begins with Russians capturing several streets within the village. Russians went on the attack in attempt to increase a buffer zone and to protect their recently acquired territories. Here is exactly how much territories that was, and as you can see, they were able to successfully reach and establish foothold within this tree line, thus protecting their gain in the village from the possible Ukrainian counterattacks coming from the northeast. And now, at the very last, let's visit the Bakhmut or Artyomovsk frontline and discuss the situation here as well. Here, after capture of Ivanivsky or village Krasnohorivka, Russians continued their attack along this road and captured those territories in the process. When it comes to the Battle of Chasiv Yar, Russians continue to hold on to their foothold within the very outskirts of this area and are still unable to advance further on. Technically, until Russians capture Kalynove, Heorhiivka, and reach canal from both sides of the Chasiv Yar, further advance within this city is unnecessary, and at this time Russians are currently busy repelling Ukrainian counterattacks. One of the reasons why Ukrainian counterattacks were very unsuccessful in this area, and has been for a long time, is due to Russian superiority in aviation and artillery. Here on this video, you can see Russian bombardment of Chasiv Yar settlement. As you can see, Russians decided to bring out so-called big guns and are basically grinding down to the dust Ukrainian fortifications and stronghold located within the city. The more they do that, the easier it is going to be for the Russians to storm the city itself. With this, I end today's video. Hopefully it was to your liking and was informative enough. Again, apologize for my absence, but I really couldn't make videos while I was sick. Currently I am still sick, but I am slightly better. Thank you again for your patience. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.